Gang, them. What's up, YouTube people? Be back for another like 10-15 minutes of literature with Shaggy the Writer. I'm gonna skip right into it this time because we've only got like 10 pages left in the torrents of spring. Shouts out for you, boy. We did this in 2 days. Probably could have done it unless if I came into the library about an hour earlier yesterday. You know what? It's cool though. Just all kinds of love going out to the r/alternate history of Discord, folks. All kinds of love going out to Against the World G. Oh man. All kinds of love for Raheem and Brittany and Don't Watch Continue. Chapter 14. Inside the beanery. They are all inside the beanery. Some do not see others. Each are intent on themselves. Indian men are intent on Indian men. White men are intent on white men or on white women. There are no red women. Are there no female Indians anymore? What has become of the squaws? Have we lost our native women in America? Silently, the door that she is open. A native woman came into the room. She was clad only in a pair of worn moccasins. On her back was a papoose. Beside her walked a husky dog. Don't look, the drummer shouted to the one at the counter. Hey, get her out of here, the owner of the beanery shouted. The squaw was forcibly ejected by the cook. They heard a thrashing sound in the snow outside. Her husky dog was barking. My God, that might have led to... Scripps O'Neill mopped his forehead with a napkin. The native people had watched with impassive faces. Yogi Johnson had been unable to move. The waitress had covered their faces with napkins or whatever was handy. Mrs. Scripps had covered her eyes with American Mercury. Scripps O'Neill was feeling faint and shaken. Something had stirred inside of him, some vague primordial feeling, as the squaw had come into the room. Wonder where the squaw came from, Joe asked. That's my woman, the little Indian said. Good God, man, can't you clothe her? Scripps O'Neill said in a dumb voice. There was no terror in his words. She don't like clothes, the little Indian explained. She's a woods Indian. Yogi Johnson was not listening. Something had broken inside of him. Something had snapped as the squaw came into the room, and he had a new feeling. A feeling he thought had been lost forever, lost for always, lost, gone permanently. He knew now it was a mistake. He was all right now. By the merest chance he had found it out. It might have not been that the squaw never came into the beanery. What bleak thoughts had he been thinking? He had been on the verge of suicide, self-destruction, killing himself. Here he was in this beanery. What a mistake that would have been. He knew now what a botch he would have made of life, killing himself. Let spring come now, let it come. It couldn't come fast enough. Let it come. He was ready for it. Listen, he said to the two Indians. I want to tell you about something that happened to me in Paris. The two Indians leaned forward. Chief got the floor, the tall man remarked. What I thought was a very beautiful thing happened to me in Paris, Yogi began. You Indians know Paris? Good. Well, it turns out the ugliest thing that ever happened to me. The Indians grunted. They knew their Paris. It was on the first day of my leave. I was walking along the boulevard Marchaba. The car passed me and a beautiful woman leaned out. She called to me. I came. She took me to a house, or rather a mansion, in the distant part of Paris. And there a very beautiful thing happened to me. Afterwards, somebody took me out a different door than I came in by. The beautiful woman had told me that she could never see me again. I tried to get the number of the mansion, but it was one block of all the mansions looking the same. From then on, all through my leave, I tried to see that beautiful lady. Once I thought I seen her go into a theater. That wasn't her. Another time I caught a glimpse of what I thought was her in a passing taxi, and leaped into another taxi and followed. I lost the taxi. I was desperate. Finally, until the last night of my leave, I was so desperate and dull that I was with one of those guides that guarantee to show you all of Paris. Well, we got started out and visited various places. Is that all you got? I asked the guide. There's a real place, but it's very expensive, the guide said. We compromised on price finally, and the guide took me. It was an old mansion. He looked through the slit in the wall. All around the wall were people looking through slits. There, looking through the slits, could be the universe of men of all the Allied countries, many handsome South Americans in evening dress. I looked through a slit myself. For a while, nothing happened. Then, a beautiful woman came into the room with a young British officer. She took off her long fur coat and her hat and threw them into a chair. The officer was taking his Sam Brown belt. I recognized her. It was the lady whom I'd been with when the beautiful thing had happened to me. Yogi Johnson looked at his empty plate of beans. Since then, he said, I've never wanted a woman. How I've suffered I cannot tell, but I've suffered, boys, I've suffered. I blame it on the war. I blame it on France. I blame it on the decay of morality in general. I blame it on the younger generation. I blamed it here, I blamed it there, now I'm cured. Here's $5 for you boys. His eyes were shining. Get you some more to eat. Take a trip somewhere. This is the happiest day of my life. He stood up from his stool before the counter, shook one of the Indians impulsively by the hand, rested his hand a minute for the other man's shoulder, opened the door of the beanery, and strode out into the night. The two Indians looked at one another. Chief, heap nice fella, observed a big Indian. Think that was him in the war? The little Indian asked. Me wonder, the big man said. Chief said he'd buy me a new artificial arm, the little Indian grumbled. Maybe you get more than that, the big Indian said. Me wonder, the little Indian said, and then they went on eating. The other end of the counter at the beanery, the marriage was coming to an end. Scripps O'Neill and his wife sat side by side. Mrs. Scripps knew now. She couldn't hold him. She had tried and failed. She had lost. She knew it was a losing game. There was no holding him now. Mandy was talking and talking, always talking, that interminable stream of literary gossip that was bringing her Diana's marriage to an end. She couldn't help but hold him. She was going, and he was going away from her. Diana sitting there in misery, Scripps listening to Mandy talking, the drummer, an old friend now, the drummer sitting reading his Detroit news. She couldn't hold him. The little Indian got up on his stool as the beanery counter and went over to the window. The glass on the little window was covered with thick, ribby frost. The Indian breathed under the window pane, rubbed the spot bare with his empty sleeve of his mackinaw coat, and looked out into the night. Suddenly, there from the window, he turned and rushed out into the night. The tall Indian watched him go, leisurely finished his meal, and took a toothpick and placed it in between his teeth. And then he too followed his friend out into the night. We're getting close now, chapter 15. It's only 16 chapters, and a final note to the reader if we get that far, which we totally will in these 10 minutes that I have left, because I'm a boss and y'all are dope, and I have so much love for my fellow readers. Chapter 15. They were alone in the beanery now, Scripps, Mandy, and Diana. Only the drummer was with them. He was an old friend now, but his nerves were on edge tonight. He folded his paper abruptly and started for the door. See you all later, he said, and he went out into the night. It seemed the only thing to do. He did it. Only the three of them were in the beanery now. Scripps and Mandy and Donna, only those three. Mandy was talking, leaning in on the counter and talking. Scripps with his eyes fixed on Mandy. Diana making no pretense of listening now. She knew it was over. It was all over now. But she would make one more attempt. One last gallant try. Perhaps she could still hold him. Perhaps it had all been just a dream. She steadied her voice and then spoke. Scripps, dear, she said. Her voice shook a little. She steadied it. What's on your mind? Scripps asked abruptly. There was the horrid clipped speech again. Scripps, dear, wouldn't you like to come home? Diana's voice quivered. There's a new Mercury. She changed over from the London Mercury to the American Mercury to please Scripps. It just came. I wish you felt like coming home, Scripps. There's the splendid thing in the Mercury. Do come home, Scripps. I've never asked anything of you before. Come home, Scripps. Oh, won't you? Scripps looked up. Diana's heart beat faster. Perhaps he was coming. Perhaps she was holding him. Holding him. Do come, Scripps, dear, Diana said softly. There's a wonderful editorial in it about Micken, about chiropractors. Scripps looked away. Won't you come, Scripps? Diana pleaded. No, Scripps said. I don't give a damn about Micken anymore. Diana dropped her head. Oh, Scripps, she said. Oh, Scripps. This was the end. She had her answer. She lost it. It was over, finished, done for. She sat crying silently. Mendy was talking again. Suddenly Diana straightened up. She had one last request to make, one thing she would ask him. Only one. He might refuse her, he might not grant it, but she would ask him. Scripps, she asked, what's the trouble? Scripps turned in irritation. Perhaps after all he was sorry for her. Cannot take the bird, Scripps. Diana's voice broke. Sure, Scripps said. Why not? Diana picked up the bird cage. The bird was asleep, perched on one leg on the night when they first met. What was it he was like? Ah, yes, like an old osprey from her home in Lake Country. She held the cage to her tightly. Thank you, Scripps, she said. Thank you for this, Boyd. Her voice broke. I must now be going. Quietly, silently, gathering her shawl around her, clutching the cage with the sleeping bird and the copy of the Mercury to her breast. It was only a backward glance, a last glance of who had been her Scripps. She opened the door to the beanery and went out into the night. Scripps did not even see her go. He was intent on what Mandy was saying. Mandy was talking again. That bird she just took out, Mandy was saying. Oh, did she take a bird out? Scripps asked. Go on with the story. You used to wonder about what sort of bird that was, Mandy went on. That's right, Scripps agreed. But it reminds me of the story about the ghost in the Marquis of Burke. Mandy went on. Tell it, Mandy, tell it, Scripps urged. It seems a great friend of mine, Ford, you've heard me speak of him before, was in the Marquis's castle during the war. His regiment was billeted there, and the Marquis was one of the richest, if not the richest man in England, was serving Ford's regiment in the private. Ford was already sitting in the library one evening. The library was a most extraordinary place. The walls were made of bricks of gold, set to tiles or something. I forget exactly how it was. Go on, Scripps urged. It doesn't matter. Anyhow, in the middle glass of the wall of the library was a stuffed flamingo in a glass case. They understood interior decorating, these English. Your wife was English, wasn't she? Asked Mandy. From Lake Country, Scripps answered. Go on with the story. Well, anyway, Mandy went on, Ford was sitting in the library one evening after mess when the butler came in and said, The Marquis de Burke compliments, and might he show the library to a group of friends with whom he had been dining. And they used to let him dine out. Sometimes they let him sleep in the castle. Ford said, Quite, and he came in by the Marquis in his private uniform, followed by Sir Edmund Gosse and Professor What's-his-name, I forget it for the moment, from Oxford. Gosse stepped in front of the stuffed flamingo in the case and said, What have we here, Buck? It's a flamingo, Sir Edmund, the Marquis answered. That's not my idea of the flamingo, Gosse remarked. No, Gosse, it's God's idea of a flamingo, Professor What's-his-name said. I wish I could remember his name. And don't bother, Scripps said. His eyes were bright. He leaned forward. Something was pounding inside of him. Something he could not control. I love you, Mandy, he said. I love you. You are my woman. The thing was pounding away inside of him. It would not stop. That's all right, Mandy answered. I've known you were my man for a long time. Would you like to hear another story, speaking of a woman? Go on, Scripps said. You must never stop, Mandy. You are my woman now. Sure, Mandy agreed. This story is about Newt Thompson, who was a streetcar conductor in Chicago. Well, go on, Scripps said. You are my woman now, Mandy. He repeated the phrase to himself, my woman. You are my woman. She is my woman. It's my woman, but somehow he was not satisfied. Somewhere, somehow, there must be something else, my woman. Those words were hollow now, into his mind. He tried to thrust it out. There came at the monster's picture of the squaw as she strode silently into the room. That squaw, she didn't wear clothes because she did not like them. Hardy, braving the winter nights. What a might not like the spring bring. Mandy was talking. Mandy talking in on the beanery. Mandy telling her stories. It grows late in the beanery. Mandy talks on. She is his woman now. He is her man. But is he her man? In Scripps' brain, that vision of the Native American woman, the squaw that strode unannounced into the beanery. She'd been thrown out into the snow. Mandy talking on, telling literary reminiscences, authentic incidents. They had a ring of truth, but were they enough, Scripps wondered? She was his woman, but for how long, Scripps wondered. Mandy talking on in the beanery, Scripps listening, but in his mind straying away. Straying away. Where was it straying out into that night? Oh man, we're doing good. Chapter 16 is only a couple of pages, and we've only got 3 minutes. Let's go! Night at Petoskey, long past midnight. Inside the beanery, a light burning, the town asleep under the northern moon. To the north, the tracks of G.R.&I. Railroad running far into the north, coal tracks stretching north toward Mackinaw City and St. Ignace. Coal tracks to be walking on at this time of night. North in the frozen little northern town, a couple walking side by side on the tracks is Yogi Johnson walking with the Native American woman. As they walk, Yogi Johnson silently strips off his garments. One by one, he strips off his garments and casts them beside the track. In the end, he is clad only in a worn pair of pub-maker shoes. Yogi Johnson naked in the moonlight, walking north beside the squaw striding along beside him. She carries a papoose on her back in his bark cradle. Yogi attempts to take the papoose from her. He would carry it. The husky dog whines and licks at Yogi Johnson's ankles. No, the squaw would carry the papoose herself on the stride into the northern night. Behind them come two figures, sharply etched in the moonlight. It is the two Indians. The two woods Indians. They stoop and gather up the garments Yogi Johnson has cached away. Occasionally they grunt to one another, striding softly in the moonlight, their keen eyes not missing a single cast-off garment. When the last garment had been cast off, as they look and see far ahead of them two figures in the moonlight, the two Indians straighten up, examine the garments. Chief Snappy Dresser, the tall Indian remarks, holding up the entailed short. Chief, gonna get pretty cold, the small Indian remarks. He hands the vest to the tall Indian. The tall Indian rolls the clothing, all the cast-off garments, into a bundle, and they start back along the tracks into town. Better keep clothes for Chief, his Salem Salvation Army.
Just wanted to give you a 5-minute warning.
I got a minute and 30 seconds, we're cool. Rest of the tall man. Chief need new clothes now anyhow, when spring comes. As they walked down the tracks toward town, the air seemed to soften. The Indians were uneasy now. Through their tamaracks and cedars beside the railway tracks, warm wind is blowing. The snowdrifts are melting now beside the tracks. Something stirs in the two men. Some urge, some strange pagan disturbance. The warm wind is blowing. The tall man stops, moistens his finger, and holds it up in the air. The little man watches. Chinook? He asked. Chinook, the tall man says. They hurry in toward town. The moon is blurred now by clouds, carried by the warm Chinook wind that is blowing. Want to get in town before the rush, the tall man grunts. Brothers want to line up well, the little man grunts anxiously. Nobody work in factory now, the tall man grunted. Better hurry, the warm wind blows. Inside, the Indians' strange longings were stirring. They knew what they wanted. Spring at last was coming to the frozen little northern town. They hurried along the track. 13 seconds left and we're at the end. I don't get to read the final author's note, but that's cool. Thank you so much for tuning in. Mad love, one love, faux faith, NFA gang, peace.